You're listening to the Turing Podcast, a production of the Alan Turing Institute, the UK's National Institute for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Turing Podcast. I'm your co-host Ed Calstry, but today I'm going to be handing over to my co-hosts B. Costa Gomez and Joe Dungate. They had a chat earlier this year with a couple of the researchers at the Institute, talking about one of the COVID-19 projects that we have at the Institute. And, you know, this is 2020 still, unfortunately. It's been a bit of a strange year, hasn't it? But for those people listening in the far future, this is the year that the COVID-19 pandemic struck. And one of the challenges that countries and local authorities have had to deal with is how to exit their lockdowns safely. So the lockdowns have been these policies which have been to, shut everything down, close schools, shops, businesses, etc. We're releasing this now at the end of September, but the conversation that's going to be the bulk of this podcast today was had a few months ago towards the end of the UK's national lockdown. And essentially the project in question is looking at capturing activity over London to better understand, quote, busyness, and aid effective policy-making strategies for exiting the lockdown. And I'm sure that the methods used will be extremely useful in case of any further lockdowns, which at the time of recording we may be about to go back into, but we'll see how it goes. Certainly a lot of local areas have had these lockdowns, so research such as this is going to be definitely, I think, very important. But without further ado, I'll hand over to B and Joe to talk about Project Odysseus.
Hi everyone! Today we're chatting with James Walsh, a research assistant at the Alan Turing Institute, and Funmi Kesa, a PhD student at the University of Warwick, and they will tell us about one of Turing's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Project Odysseus, by capturing activity over London to better understand busyness, and I'm doing air quotes on here, and aid effective policy making strategies for exiting the pandemic lockdown. Hello guys!
Hi.
Welcome. How are you guys doing in this pandemic?
Well, quite fine. Apart from staying in my room 24 hours, I think I'm okay. Yeah.
I left the country. I ran and I hid. I accidentally did that before. Yeah, I accidentally did that before the lockdown happened, and hence I am now stayed outside the country. But that's worked out well.
Yes, because I was going to say...
Oh, the US.
US?
I was here to see my brother, and then lockdown happened.
So now you're locked in the US.
Indeed.
And where are you from me?
Yeah, I'm currently in Coventry.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
I'm in London. I'm in deepest, darkest East London.
I'm in Manchester. Just still here, still locked. But there's new projects that came out with this pandemic, and one of them you guys have been working on it. So let's start with the basics. What is Project Odysseus? What question is it trying to answer? And what are you guys personally doing?
Sure, I'll start on that. So Odysseus started off as, to be honest, a clean air project, which is the London air quality Turing project that's been occurring for the last couple of years, and it's been built predominantly by a sort of rather large team from the Warwick Machine Learning Group. We've got a lot of Oliver Howlick's work, Patrick O'Hara's work, James Robinson, Oscar Giles. All of these people have sort of been working on this project for the last 2 years, and really done a huge amount of the legwork for what really was just a sort of like cherry on top of their work. What we've done is take effectively what they've been doing and with them tried to come up with ways in which we can provide some level of insight, would be the sort of businessy sort of term, for how data has evolved throughout this pandemic. So the original, if I do a little bit of background on that project, the original intent of London Air Quality is to ingest large quantities of relevant data such as traffic information, road sensors, weather sensors, air quality sensors, satellite data, and apply new methods, as of course it's a research task predominantly, to try and come up with better ways in which we can in real time respond to the City of London for what we predict the pollution estimates to be. And there's additional works, as one might imagine, that can be completed after that. But when that becomes relevant to COVID is, of course, that means we have this entire infrastructure designed to ingest data about London. And in this instance, of course, that might be pollution, but it was asked of us from the City of London if we could consider ingesting things that would be relevant to COVID and then responding to them with our analysis and also the aggregate results of multiple different data streams. And that's effectively where this project has come from. The name itself, do you want to ask me that question specifically?
Yes, I do want to know. I was going to ask that. Where does the name come from? Okay, so
the name is about Greek mythology. No, I can't say that. Greek mythology. No, it's from one of Homer's works. It's about Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, and his power over the Cyclops. And if you have sort of heard anything about that before, he effectively outfoxes the Cyclops, and the Cyclops eye is also known as Corona. So it's a sort of way around of saying that we're hoping to do something against Corona.
Okay, cool. So when you say large amounts of data and like traffic data, you mean cameras or just volume of cars passing? What actual type of data are you talking about?
Sure. So one of the primary things that we were sort of doing as a new area of the London Air Quality Project was ingesting camera footage from traffic feeds. So these are open source traffic feeds that are very low resolution. So what we wanted to do was effectively just work out how to count the number of starts and stops for vehicles as pollution generating events. And that's actually where Funmi comes in. So Funmi, Sam, and I'll let her introduce the rest of her group, worked on this last summer. And effectively we sort of noticed how impressive this work was and wanted to come along and introduce that as like a post-processing stream into this otherwise rather large system. And that's evolved specifically for coronavirus because we wanted to include pedestrians, which means that we would have some understanding of pedestrian or foot traffic congestion or lack of such congestion in particular areas, of course, to monitor activity in London. And then the final relevance, the last thing I would say from that particular data stream is an estimation of social distancing. So we're unable to determine individual faces and characteristics of people, but we can detect humanoids, specifically on cameras that are overlooking a lot of the London intersections or traffic lights for the non-Americans. And in those instances, we can see if people are maintaining the social distancing requirements, and that's obviously something that's relevant to policymakers.
And how easy or hard have you found it, kind of transferring the focus of the project towards COVID?
It's sort of interesting. So that sort of defines about how it sort of came out. It sort of reached this. I wouldn't say the entire project is refocused. I would say that a lot of people have sort of come on board because this infrastructure, this platform, this foundation was in place.
So it's kind of expanded, maybe
yes,
more.
rapidly.
Yeah.
And I would say the sort of hard part has been, onboarding a lot of people to teach them about how to use the infrastructure and that sort of thing. But that hasn't been too much of a problem, really. It's just been the scale. Traditionally, we're used to processing large quantities of sort of count data, that's not too hard computationally, depending on what you're doing with it, of course. But the real issue has been the footage. The amount of footage that we're processing in real time is relatively high, and hence it's required a sort of relearning of some technologies to accommodate that. So I can go into more details about that, but I should let Funmi speak.
Cool.
Yes, I was going to ask Funmi to explain a little bit what she's been doing so far.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think James already mentioned part of what I'm doing and where I happen to come in. Last year, my group, part of Data Science for Social Good, we started a project called London Air Quality, where we were processing cameras, jam cams from TfL. They are currently publicly available, so we're using the API to download videos and try to detect objects like cars and motorbikes and bicycles. And it actually was a 3-month project, so our idea was to be able to count the type of vehicles in the camera and have like statistics that researchers can use to measure air pollution. And luckily for us, the team at Alan Turing found it useful, and that's why we're currently working with the overall project, the Odysseus project, to be able to also like count the number of people in the jam cams. So currently we're extending that work to include people. Like James mentioned, we can't really identify the people in the camera, but with the features, using computer vision algorithm, we can detect if there's a person in the video and count the number of people in that video, and also the number of cars and other objects that are very useful to the London air quality. So currently I'm working with James on the computer vision side of the project.
Okay. What outcomes do you guys expect to come from Project Odysseus?
So I would say that the interest level of this project was a lot higher than we originally realized. The sort of outcomes, the immediate outcomes, has always been the same. It's been, are we able to provide some information to the local government of London for particular areas of activity? So they already have some metrics, right? They already have Oyster card. They may already have some traffic and congestion of vehicles and all that. So it's effectively trying to supplement those very, very quickly, so that we have this idea of either those items brought in and aggregate and then effectively cleaned, so they're able to make an analysis based on data that has gone through at least some level of post-processing, or using these jam cams for these pedestrian foot traffic values. So what we hope is that they would see this, and there have been instances already where there have been areas that have been of particular sort of discontinuity with what we've generated as historical profiles for that particular area, and it's spotting these outliers and acting as this early warning system. So because this is running in real time, because we have historical data, we're able to build up a sort of profile, generally what this particular area of London looks like, and then compare, as you might imagine, in real time, or usually, to be honest, with about 2 hours lag, how different that is. And if it's obviously large enough, then that allows us to sort of say, okay, hang on, there's something interesting happening over here. We don't know always what that is. I mean, it's not always obvious. You just disabled. You shuttle cinemas, for example, and then all of a sudden you're used to seeing what a movie release would be, and you see that coming up as an example of some sort of intervention, something that the city has done. Then it's this ability to hopefully watch back how that has changed historically. I'm not sure that's a great example, but that's one. A better example is, say that there's a borough that has a particular higher activity rate than one would imagine in comparison to other boroughs. well, that was one of the instances that had occurred, and they wanted to understand why. And it wasn't necessarily easy for us to be able to say why. That wasn't our role. But by pointing out the fact that there was some event occurring over here, and this is why we think something's happened, they were able to determine that there's a difference in general jobs for that particular area. So there were more people working in construction, for example, in this particular area. And that implied, of course, that the construction workers themselves weren't either able to stay within the lockdown, or they were reaching some form of pressure, and hence there needed to be some sort of intervention with the construction companies.
I guess the question now is, for example, in the past few weeks, we've been seeing an easing of the lockdown. Have you noticed difference in the data, and how can this project help with the exiting of the lockdown and following the steps that the government says we need to follow in order to ease even more the lockdown rules?
Yeah, so the lockdown has been easing, and hence we've very clearly seen that more people have been going out. I mean, the difference sort of in March when the lockdown really started, and how it was historically, was monumental. It was huge, and that we sort of very much hoped to see, and was the case. And now we are seeing some areas definitely light up for some times of day. How it works over time is effectively trying to assist strategies for planning. So it might be which bus routes come online at which times, or which schools can take which particular groups of people. It's not always going to be perfect. The data is never going to be absolutely enough necessarily to make these decisions on its own, but it can provide as an assistance to questions like those for how to bring City of London back up effectively, and just making sure there isn't instances that may have accidentally, say, some combination of bus routes increased a huge amount of pressure on one particular location of the city. Well, that's going to be against social distancing, and hence for the next few months that could include a lot of congestion and be a high risk area. That's not something they want to do, obviously.
I do have a question, because now it's a very hot topic, which is data protection. And fear of over surveillance. And you guys already pointed out that you can't identify people on the images, but I imagine you can track someone by their clothes or something like that across several cameras if needed. And my question is, how can you reassure our Londoner listeners, and Joe, because I bet Joe is now like, I walked and the camera caught me.
I've been all over the place.
How can you reassure our London listeners that they have their privacy protected?
So the clips themselves are 10 seconds in length. They're incredibly short clips that we receive every 2 to 4 minutes. These clips don't permit you to track an individual, even if we were to be able to determine some sort of humanoid by their physical features or height or something like that, or their clothing, I think, as you suggested. It wouldn't really be very easy, if I don't want to say impossible, but it would be incredibly difficult for us to be capable of tracking a particular individual. They'd have to walk exactly in where there are traffic cameras, and then they would have to stay anyway. They would have to stay within all of their all of these. I need to retake this question. Funmi, do you want to take it?
Okay, I think I understand what James is trying to say, because currently the cameras that we have access to are updated by TfL every 4 minutes, and they're just 10 seconds clips. So if you imagine someone walking in front of the camera, like within 10 seconds, after 4 minutes, we don't know where they are. So even if maybe some experts try to identify the person via their physical features, or like James mentioned, we can't really track, because we don't have the video to like record like 4 minutes worth of action or where they are. So it would be really difficult for someone to use that kind of data to like track anyone.
Okay, because that's good to know. That's good to know that people are not being tracked. Although I do imagine you guys probably have some sort of judgment when you see people not socially distancing, and you kind of admit to us, no one is listening except all of our listeners, that you guys look at them and slightly judge them a little bit when they do not respect the rules.
Isn't that the most fun thing to come out of the pandemic, is judging other people freely?
Exactly. We could just you can be so mean now, and you can finally yell at teenagers for just meeting their friends. This is we've reached.
Yeah, it's for the good of global health. It's fine.
Not on my front lawn.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, this was the City of London that contacted the Turing. This is a highly collaborative project, so you are coordinating between universities, not just one, but several, and also the institutions like the Transport for London and Greater London Authority. How has it been coordinating all of these science and non-science institutions?
Silence.
Yes.
Very second to make sure that I
did not give a political answer.
This is it's okay if you say very mean things. Dan can always bleep this part if needed.
No, I just was trying to say, like, it kind of, the project started off already with GLA, so we already had a partnership with Greater London Authority, and we already was working with TfL on a number of things. So it hasn't really been, we haven't had a sort of rocky road of figuring out where everybody sits or how everything's supposed to be combined. It's been much more of a situation where we kind of all knew each other already, and we all knew each other for one particular aspect of the piece of work that we were originally trying to do for air quality, and instead we were just sort of coming along and went, oh, okay, this is now something that we can do now. That means we need to get this working within a week, 2 weeks, and we need to make sure that this is useful for something like the COVID pandemic, and that's kind of how everything sort of came together. Like it wasn't. My point, my hesitation wasn't that it's been like a new project where we've all sort of come along and tried to work out exactly what it was that we were trying to do here. We all kind of already had a good understanding of each other about what we were going to do, and it was just building in that capability to also take a look at how in which the activity of London is changing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, this is slightly, I don't know, maybe kind of diverting my thoughts to, possible outcomes of this project. But, say your data, looks at different boroughs, and it's noticeable that certain boroughs, there's a lot more activity and, social distancing hasn't happened, whatever. Is it plausible that lockdowns could happen within specific boroughs? Is that like a possibility? Or I don't know, like I'm kind of thinking beyond the question of like London. London's a very complicated city and has very different feels in different areas. It's like a mega city, isn't it? So I don't know, it's just kind of me speculating.
That would also be me speculating then as well, I'm afraid to say in that answer. I wouldn't know. I would be surprised if they were to lock down individual boroughs. I mean, the City of London as a whole is still managed by, yes, individually local governments for those boroughs, but also the Greater London Authority as a whole. And I think to go so far as to lock down, I have no idea what the jurisdiction is of those individual boroughs, but I'd be curious to know whether or not the boroughs themselves have that jurisdiction or if it does lie with the mayor. And I don't know, but it's not necessarily that you need to lock down an entire borough, because I mean that's a large block of land, and it's not necessarily that you would want to get down specifically to that individual street, those particular groups of people. Instead, it's much more like, hang on, there's something occurring in this block of housing that seems a bit peculiar when it comes to how other people are managing through, and it's understanding, okay, well, what can we do to make it easier for those people in that particular block of housing, for example.
Okay, that's interesting. I know that in terms of like closing parks and kind of those public spaces early on in the lockdown, that I think kind of came down to an individual borough decision. But yeah, beyond that, I don't really know. But yeah, I just thought I'd ask the question.
No, sorry.
I'm just imagining if this data goes public, and then you just have like sort of little wars between boroughs about, oh my god, look, they did not distance themselves and we did, and so it's their fault. And
Lambeth.
all of this like territorial attacks. I have one question though, because you guys say that you have access to these images every 4 minutes, and it's a 10-second clip, right? But the algorithms that you're developing can be used on more continuous images. Is there a how can I ask this without being too mean? Is there how exploitable is this? That's my question. Like, how you have access to clips every 4 minutes, but what if TfL and GLA use it for continuous clips? Is it feasible? Dun dun dun.
No, I just want to make sure that Funmi has a chance to answer some questions. Otherwise, it's just me talking the entire time, and that's not very interesting. My answer to that would be there are only 10-second clips that are available, and the clips have been available for years. It's part of TfL's Open Roads initiative. They've been around for a very long time. They really are traffic cameras. Predominantly, a large quantity of them are just sitting on roads outside London. It's only those that are inside London that are looking at an intersection that are interesting to us, and that's kind of it. Like it, as much as I think it could be interesting if you could apply this onto even more regularly updated clips and even more continuous data. I don't know how much more useful that would be, honestly, because you're already getting pretty fine-grained samples very frequently, and the number of people that are going to be passing between a 4-minute interval shouldn't, unless it's some sort of weird Black Friday event that we didn't all plan for, shouldn't really come about. Funmi, do you want to add anything?
I'm just thinking about the question about the exploitation. I feel it's worth looking at, and I guess that comes to the ethics side of AI. Currently there are many AI algorithms out there that people can actually exploit if they want to, but I feel the work we're currently doing, and currently we are just counting. We're not even storing any data that has to do with any car features or features about people and all that. But anybody, any other person can pick up the code and tweak it to their own taste and all that, which we don't really have control over. But I think with the way it is right now, it's just for counts, and I don't think TfL would want to exploit that, because they, like James mentioned, they already have data that they're providing publicly, and it's low resolution. And I think TfL is also aware of people's privacy and security, and that's why we can't even access high resolution data. And I currently, the way I feel no, it cannot be exploited.
That's good to know.
At the beginning of this project, we were very nervous about that, predominantly because we weren't sure either, especially with where this project was going. So we did conduct a ethical review through the official Turing channel in which to do so, and effectively concluded that, honestly, that without high-resolution footage, without any identifying features, without data that was in any way de-anonymized, it's not actually something that could ever really be so easily exploited. You would have to make substantial changes to the system in order to somehow use it nefariously. And even then, I mean, all we're trying to do is provide here one additional data stream of a particular sample of how we believe people are within particular areas, and that also includes such things as camera features. So we also have an idea now as to the height of a camera, where it's pointing, the angle, the field of view. Like, these are all relatively interesting statistics to us because we want to know so that we can actually calculate distance between two humanoid detections. But I can't immediately see how that would be useful to many other people, or any other people, in fact.
Are you guys now extra aware that you're being recorded when you walk outside? Given. No, you're just accepting.
Sorry, no. The City of London is the most surveilled city like in Europe, right? I mean, I think it's one of
the most surveilled cities in the world, actually.
Surprised me.
I'm fairly sure it is. I mean, and I don't particularly see that as a bad thing, to be honest. I mean, It's not exactly as if all of that information is just broadcast live to the world. And even then, a lot of the time it is genuinely just people walking from A to B to get to work or to get to the shops. I think it's more useful to... I mean, as a general question, I think it's more useful to the police to be able to catch individuals or catch events that may have occurred that do require some additional evidence, and being the most surveilled city is a very reasonable expectation. And fortunately, I'm not sure how much I can how much I should say that statement. I do trust the fact that we do relatively well when it comes to our private data within the UK. I mean, a lot of it is protected, a lot of it is very well governed and very well legislated. We're lucky and fortunate to be in that situation.
Yes. For now, there's still GDPR applied. Okay, guys. So this is non-related to the project. But given that you have access to these images, what's the weirdest thing that you have seen on camera? We are curious about it. I bet our listeners were thinking the same thing. Like, what is the weirdest thing? Or the thing that surprised you the most from the camera footage? This is for both of you.
I think you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sitting there and watching video footage of people walking across a traffic light, I can't say I've seen anything peculiar, and I'm quite pleased to say I haven't seen anything peculiar in that particular scenario. I mean, as part of the ethical review, I was nervous that there could be events such as car crashes or something that, as somebody who then has access and is then looking at this footage, could then quite nervously see and therefore be affected by it. But on the whole, the amount of time that we spend looking at footage is down to really comparing results of algorithms from these particular clips, and of course working out labels if there are instances where we need to include particular labels and increasing the data set that we have originally. So I can't say that I found honestly anything that has been particularly surprising or interesting or comedic. I'm afraid it's literally just been people trying to cross the road, and then it's us trying to figure out how in which we can best analyze that.
I was actually going to go first because I was going to say the same thing. Like, I think most of the time we've spent working on this project has always been trying to evaluate if the number of counts we're getting is accurate and things like that. And maybe the only weird thing I've seen is with the classification algorithm, trying to, maybe in a particular video, on the road, sometimes you would see drawings of bikes bikes majorly on the road, or maybe cars, just to show that, okay, cars can only move on this path and, bicycles can move on this path. And the weirdest thing is even the algorithm is trying to also detect the drawings on the ground. And that seems so weird to me, and yeah.
So on that, what is your solution to that?
I've been thinking about that, but I haven't really.
Really? Is there no application of tracking that would be relevant here?
I don't know yet, because even that applies to some of the vehicles that we're trying to classify. Maybe situations where you have diagrams on the vehicles, the algorithm would also try to classify what is on the vehicle. I think that's another research area, sort of.
Yeah.
I was just imagining all of the paranoid people that at once danced at a cross road or something like that, and now they're like, oh my god, someone saw me doing my silly walk. Yes, probably someone did, but they didn't register that. It's fine. Your silly walk is safe with us.
Are you a card-carrying member of the Ministry of Silly Walks?
No, but I have done my fair share of silly walks around London,
Okay.
so that is
you have
a
far
worry.
more fun than I do at traffic intersections. I have to say.
Do you have any more questions, Joe?
Do you think there'll be any plans to kind of expand this beyond London, or into any other cities in the UK? Or
So, I mean, the project itself, the London Air Quality Project, also has plans one day to be applicable outside of London. A lot of the stuff that we do, obviously the research itself, the algorithms themselves, those are going to be published, of course. And then the code itself should also be published, and it will likely be made open source effectively when we can detach it enough from our own infrastructure. So, because there's just a lot of infrastructural code there, some of it doesn't all really make any use or any sense to publish or make open source. So anything that involves database management and some of the other like data manipulation subroutines, some of that stuff's not really particularly that useful. But if we could find a way to make it more accessible or more helpful as like a general package, then yes, we would, and then it'll be applicable to really the way we've sort of gone about it is whomever comes along with interesting data sources that can make use of these algorithms. So I do hope that it will be applicable to other cities. I think right now we're in a really good position to make it really useful for London specifically, and then we'll come down to we'll sort of come back to whether or not it can be as easily applicable to other cities based on what particular data streams they have, both on the pollution and on the activity side of things. But yeah, it just sort of depends what is available in which city and who would be interested. So I would say, yeah, it's definitely applicable, but we're prioritizing London at the moment.
Thank you, guys. How can people learn more about this project, and how can people find you guys online?
Best way to find us is on the Turing website, Project Odysseus. Just type that into Google, Project Odysseus Turing, that should come up. If not, you can look at London Air Quality. Obviously, you could also always search Theo Damoulas, who is obviously the assistant professor in charge. Got to cut that bit. I keep getting this wrong. Let me redo that. So you can find us on Project Odysseus, the project page on Turing's website. You can probably find that quite easily by just popping that into Google. And of course, you can always find us by looking after the associate professor, Theo Damoulas, whose team, of course, we are all a part of.
Yeah. Do you guys have any? Yes. Do you have any social media that you want to share?
No.
What?
I don't use social media.
How about you, Funmi?
Well, my boss said no.
Oh, no. I wasn't saying no for her. No, I was just meaning that I don't have any social media. Please, Funmi, please share your Twitter handle, like and subscribe.
Okay, yeah, usually on Twitter, like it's just my name, Funmi Kesa, FUNMIKESA.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. It was lovely. We'll look forward to see how this helps and how it goes along, and hopefully it helps the easing of this lockdown that we're all stuck in. But yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay.
thank you.
To learn more about the work going on at the Alan Turing Institute, visit our website at turing.ac.uk. To get in touch with the podcast team if you have any questions or suggestions, email us at podcast@turing.ac.uk.
Music for this episode was provided by Jamin Sun. You can listen to his latest releases at jaminsun.bandcamp.com.
The Turing Podcast is hosted by Ed Calstry, Tara Callum, Ben Walden, Effie Dennis, and produced by Dan Whitfield for the Alan Turing Institute.